within the master race.
The world is filled with narratives, stories, and histories that shape the perceptions and beliefs of communities, cultures, and individuals. Some of these stories are harrowing and unsettling, unraveling the threads of humanity's darker sides. In the tapestry of human existence, one such thread leads us into the convoluted labyrinth of a movement grounded in racial hatred and discrimination, the white supremacist gangs and their offspring, the skinhead gangs. Allow me, dear listener, to take you on a journey through the maze of history, where we will encounter unsettling philosophies and movements. Our voyage will reveal a world shadowed by intolerance, and our guide will be the evidence, facts, and insights into the skinhead gangs and their roots. It is a journey of understanding, not endorsement, one that seeks to expose rather than to conceal. Skinhead gangs, an unraveling of hatred. In the chaotic landscape of racial tension, the emergence of a group known as skinheads has sent ripples through communities across the globe. These street warriors, who don their shaved heads like armor, have become synonymous with the white supremacist movement. A street presence born of intolerance. Today, the term white pride or white separatism might be the euphemistic expressions for white superiority, but the manifestation on the street is represented by these gangs, individual cells operating independently but connected through the webs of the internet and cellular telephony. A historical perspective. Understanding these gangs requires delving into the annals of history, where the seeds of white supremacist ideology were planted. Tracing back to the aftermath of the Civil War, this extremist movement has been a thorn in the fabric of American society. It is a movement diverse in its makeup, comprised of three distinct subgroups. Visible skinhead groups, easily identifiable, adorned with distinctive hairstyles, tattoos, clothing, and engaged in criminal activities. Middle-class organizations, attracting working Americans into groups like ARM, AYM, or WAR, with members lurking in the shadows, almost like sleeper cells, ready to rise. Highly organized groups, like the infamous KKK, a group whose history spans over 150 years, these older, established organizations differ from the younger street gangs. Philosophies of hatred. The roots of white supremacist ideologies stretch back to the 19th century. The propagation of a fictional document entitled The Protocols of the Elders of Zion gave rise to the anti-Semitic myth, later championed by figures like Henry Ford. From the belief in an international Jewish conspiracy to the development of the Christian identity doctrine, white supremacist ideologies evolved into a complex web of myths and beliefs. The idea of racial purity, the scapegoating of Jews, the portrayal of non-Anglo-Saxons as inferiors, these all play a role in the complex philosophy that fuels the movement. The origins of skinhead culture. The roots of the skinhead movement extend across the Atlantic, originating in England in the mid-1960s. The rise of immigrant competition for jobs led to the formation of all-white working-class communities that developed white pride. In contrast to the long-haired youth, the skinheads shaved their hair off. With bands like Screwdriver acting as catalysts, the neo-Nazi skinhead groups emerged in America, donning distinctive clothing, fueled by racist music, and engulfed by the white pride philosophy. The evolution and classification of skinhead gangs. From the early days in Los Angeles and New York to the nationwide spread fueled by touring bands, the skinhead movement has grown and diversified. Today, there are three major classifications. Neo-Nazi racist skinheads. Non-racist skinheads, sharp. Independents. These groups, though dressed alike once, are now separated only by their belief systems. Membership, a journey of identity and transformation. In the times long past, when the world was yet to see the dawn of the 21st century, the skinhead culture was seen as a mere fringe, bound by aggression, criminality, and raw, unfiltered hatred. The members were often young, filled with a fire that fueled violence, and they found their way into gangs as a means of expression. However, the landscape of the skinhead gangs began to shift. No longer were they only found in dysfunctional families or among the restless youth. They emerged from the heart of the middle class, from homes where you would least expect them. The ranks swelled, and the demographic began to change. Now, men between 20 and 40 were joining the ranks. It was a paradigm shift that stunned those who observed from the outside, a change that seemed to herald a new era. Yet, even within this maze of hatred, there were layers. Some did not see themselves as racists, living dual lives that juxtaposed normality with a hidden underworld of violence. They were the weekend warriors, fighting without a cause. Clothing, a symbol of unity and defiance. The clothing became more than just a uniform, it became an identity, a symbol of their beliefs. From the rugged Dr. Martin boots to the distinctive jackets, each article of clothing carried a message. Colors became statements, red for bloodshed, black for neutrality, white for pride. The clothes they wore were not just a fashion choice, they were a declaration of allegiance to a cause, a way to recognize each other in the crowd. The shaven heads, once a mere practicality, evolved into a popular style that transcended the boundaries of the subculture, making its way into mainstream fashion. A trend that once signified aggression now became a style statement. Graffiti, the voice of the streets. Graffiti, a medium of expression as ancient as human civilization itself, became a tool in the hands of the skinhead gangs. Symbols and signs emerged, a secret language that spoke of alliances, beliefs, and the unspoken code of the streets. The swastikas, lightning bolts, and hateful slurs were not mere markings on the wall. They were a testament to their presence, an announcement to the world that they were here, watching, waiting. Yet, not all used this medium. The older members often refrained, an unspoken rule among those who had seen and experienced more. Mentality, the heart of darkness. But what truly united the skinhead gangs was the philosophy they held dear. A belief in white supremacy became the glue that held them together, the cause that gave them purpose. Their violent crimes, seemingly random and without reason, were driven by this underlying belief. They saw themselves as soldiers in a war, battling for a cause that transcended mere geography. Money, too, became a driving force, leading many down the path of identity theft and financial crimes. A new avenue to power, an undercurrent that flowed beneath the surface of their violent exterior. The tactics of confrontation. Skinhead gangs, steeped in the ideology of white supremacy, developed a particular way to initiate violent attacks. These were not random acts of aggression, but carefully honed tactics, sharpened through repetition, and designed to provoke a response. Statements of white pride were frequently made before an attack, challenging the victim's patriotism, seeking to lure them into a heated argument. The conversation would grow more and more intense, and then, like a storm breaking, the skinheads would attack, often as a united group. Signals and precursors. These verbal confrontations were more than mere expressions of hatred, they were signals, a precursor to the violence that would follow. Female members of the gang might join in the verbal onslaught, their words acting like fuel to the fire that was soon to rage. The entire gang might take part in the confrontation, their voices crescendoing into a terrifying symphony that heralded the ensuing assault. This was not merely random violence, it was ritualized aggression, an informal understanding within the gang that this was how an assault was orchestrated. Drunken brawls as entertainment. Some skinheads confided that their idea of fun was to get drunk and fight. Gathered in popular locations such as beaches, parks, or entertainment centers, they would fuel themselves with alcohol and seek out a fight, targeting those they deemed as enemies. Whether it was Mexican gang members or other minorities, the thirst for conflict seemed insatiable. The victims and triggering comments. The victims were often chosen at random, ranging from other whites to military personnel. A common triggering comment might be a deceptively simple question, like, "What are you looking at?" A question that, in the context of gang culture, was really a challenge. Such challenges, once made, never went unanswered. Skinheads usually attacked in small groups, fighting not just for ideology but for what they perceived as fun. It was their version of recreation, a brutal game played on the streets. Hate crimes. Beyond random assaults, skinhead gangs were also responsible for committing hate crimes. The victims in these instances were carefully chosen, targeted for their race, religion, or sexual orientation. Plans were sometimes made, seeking a particular type of victim to unleash their violence upon. Unity of belief. An 18-year-old skinhead once declared, "All skinheads are brothers no matter where they are because they share a common belief in white supremacy." The physical locations were irrelevant, the bond was in the shared ideology. Across the United States, hundreds of different skinhead groups thrived, united by a philosophy that transcended geographical boundaries. Leaderless resistance. There was a speculation that this method aligned with the white supremacist strategy of leaderless resistance. Operating in small, independent groups, they engaged in random, unplanned attacks that were all part of the grander white supremacist movement. It was a calculated chaos, fueled by the violence they unleashed. Intra-gang violence. Even within the same gang, violence could erupt for reasons ranging from jealousy to personal insults. These were not just spontaneous eruptions, but could be planned attacks, sometimes escalating to stabbings and shootings. Respect was paramount, and any insult had to be answered with violence. Symbols and tattoos. The symbols used by the skinheads were more than mere gestures. Raising the right arm at a 45-degree angle to form the Nazi salute was a sign of allegiance, a salute to a comrade arrested for the cause. Traditional hand signs were also used, forming letters like W and P for white power or initials representing their gang name. Tattoos played a significant role in their subculture, with symbols like swastikas, lightning bolts, and various flags being common. The tattoos were not merely for show, they were personal reminders of their commitment, marking them for life. Attitude and belief system. Their attitude was laced with conspiracy theories and deep-seated beliefs. The acronym ZOG, Zionist Occupational Government, was a common term among them, reflecting their belief in a global conspiracy led by the Jews. Authority figures were seen as members of this conspiracy, and some were even willing to die for their beliefs. Though their racist attitudes were often visible, some were able to live and work within a racially diverse population. They could contain their hatred, acting normally with neighbors or co-workers, only to unleash their fury on selected targets. The music and its message. In the beginning, there was oi music. Rooted in English working-class origins, the genre found resonance with a particular breed of discontented youth. The word oi was an informal greeting, a call to arms, a unifying cry. But the music quickly morphed into something darker, something tinged with racism and violence. Bands like Screwdriver led the charge, with their leader Ian Stewart at the helm, becoming icons in the world of hate music. The lyrics were the manifesto, the guitar riffs the battle cry. Themes of racial purity, white supremacy, and violent retribution against those considered other were the order of the day. The tattoo of the band's name became a badge of honor, a mark of allegiance. But the music did more than just speak to a generation of angry youth. It served as a powerful tool of propaganda. As Tom Metzger, the founder of White Aryan Resistance, wisely observed, music could influence more minds than any speech. Hate music's evolution. From its birth, the genre evolved and spread like a dark shadow, with subgenres like racist oi and rock against communism, RAC, springing up. Hatecore music, a subgenre of hardcore punk, also emerged, all espousing the same philosophies of racial supremacy and hate. These were not hidden messages, wrapped in metaphor or symbolism. Bands with names like Jew Slaughter and Angry Aryans wore their ideologies on their sleeves, and record labels like Panzerfaust Records amplified their voices. Even more sinister, hate music became a tool for recruitment, a siren song calling to the impressionable youth, attempting to lure them into a world of hate. Project Schoolyard, USA in 2004 was an especially chilling attempt to target elementary and junior high school children. Substance abuse and crime. As the tale unfolds, we move into a different aspect of the skinhead lifestyle, substance abuse and crime. Alcohol, particularly beer, became the preferred intoxicant, but harder drugs like cocaine, heroin, marijuana, and LSD began to make inroads. Methamphetamine, the poor man's cocaine, became synonymous with some skinhead gangs, who even turned to trafficking. A once unthinkable alliance between crime and ideology was formed. Crime itself took on many forms, from hate crimes based on race and ethnicity to armed robbery and identity theft. Firearms replaced boots and bats, and a new wave of violence was unleashed. Occult religions. In a twist that may seem strange to some, parts of the skinhead movement began to align themselves with occult practices, blending their supremacist beliefs with Satanism or witchcraft. The occult became another expression of their antisocial behavior, adding yet another layer of complexity to an already multifaceted subculture. Female gang members. The skinhead world was not solely the domain of men. Women found their place within the ranks, with some even forming their own all-female gang known as the Featherwoods. Their roles varied, some even believing their purpose was to bear children to reconstitute the Aryan race. Non-violent crimes can be just as damaging, if not more so, than physical violence. The burning of a cross in the yard of a minority family's residence doesn't wound flesh, but it tears at the soul, leaving scars that might never heal. It's not only the immediate victims who suffer this pain, the emotional and psychological distress permeates the entire community. Such crimes of hate do not always appear in forms as overt as cross burnings. They might also manifest as racial slurs, verbally or in writing, or symbols of hate, such as swastikas defacing a sacred place. Schools and colleges become battlegrounds during recruitment periods, where the walls are plastered with flyers filled with racial caricatures and epithets. These flyers, demeaning and blaming minorities for societal problems, become a haunting presence. A race traitor represents an individual who has turned their back on the ideologies of the supremacist movement, whether they never subscribed to it or have since renounced their views. These individuals might include Anglo or Northern Europeans who reject the skinhead philosophy or former members who no longer believe in racial supremacy. America's history with white supremacist groups is both deep and complex. Once, well-known groups like the Order, Aryan Nations, Ku Klux Klan, and the American Nazi Party, among others, permeated the nation. Prominent figures like David Duke and Tom Metzger commanded media attention. Duke's political aspirations came crashing down when his past affiliations were brought to light, while Metzger and his son became notorious for their cable television program, Race and Reason. Based in California, the Metzgers also founded and ran the operations for the White Aryan Resistance. Their associations with various far-right political groups and their involvement in the movement made them the most renowned father-son duo in America's white supremacist scene. The shadow of violence and cruelty is never far away from such ideologies. One tragic example is the brutal murder of Mulugata Sarah, an Ethiopian immigrant, by a skinhead gang in Portland, Oregon, in 1988. A subsequent civil lawsuit implicated Tom and John Metzger in the attack, exposing their encouragement of violence across the nation. The jury found them guilty, and they were stripped of their assets. Sadly, this was neither the first nor the last time skinhead violence led to tragedy. Efforts to unify different skinhead gangs have sometimes involved connections with established white supremacist groups, like the Ku Klux Klan. The ideologies of these gangs are ever-shifting, and some are short-lived, while others become well-entrenched. They communicate through a network of white pride philosophy, hate music, and literature. Disturbing trends within these groups include apocalyptic beliefs about the end of the world and the initiation of a race war. Some stockpile supplies in preparation for this conflict, while others, like the Skinhead group that planned to bomb a church in Los Angeles, actively try to instigate it. The Peckerwoods represent a particular faction of skinheads, with an estimated membership of up to 2,000 in California. Their beliefs and activities include hate against various races, tolerating Hispanics only for protection in prison, and involvement in criminal activities like drug sales and assaults on police officers. Their slang and tattoos symbolize their dedication to the cause. Skinhead gangs operate in cells with no direct connections, yet they are part of a philosophical network facilitated through the internet and media. There are signs of attempts to unite several gangs and perhaps develop a more structured organization. In conclusion, the skinhead movement is a multifaceted and ever-changing manifestation of hate and intolerance. From non-violent acts that scar communities to violent crimes that take lives, they represent a dark undercurrent in society. Their ideologies, actions, and connections remind us that the battle against prejudice is ongoing, and the path to understanding and acceptance is fraught with obstacles. The complexity of this issue warrants continuous attention, vigilance, and a commitment to education, empathy, and justice.